Welcome to the Miracle You, guiding you on the journey towards finding passion and purpose, and how to discover, create, and live a life by your design. Whether your success has been plentiful or your missed opportunities have been overwhelming, we can help you become a more empowered, masterful person and show you how to share your gift with the world. It's time to inspire change from within with the host of the Miracle You, Vince Kramer.
Hello, imagination. I'm Vince Kramer, your host, and welcome to the Miracle You, where you learn about the magic of living your life by finding the example in real life.
We've mentioned many times the fact that the source energy, the one true energy, each and every one of us is a part of, which means we affect each other in so many different ways. Everything that we do affects others, and everything that they do affects us. There's an interconnectedness throughout the universe, not just in us as human beings, but all energies are connected in so many different ways. And that connection can support us. It can help us in our growth. It can help us in our expansion. That connection can take us to places much faster than we could do or make that journey ourselves. Those connections can help us really find opportunities that are available to us. And there are so many opportunities in the universe available to each and every one of us. So understanding the interconnectedness amongst us as human beings, and the importance that if we bring our fullness, if we bring our gifts to the world, we're going to support others in bringing theirs. Help them in their vibration as they navigate the waters of their lives. I'm with Elizabeth Rosner today. Elizabeth is known as Dr. Roz. She's a holder of several advanced degrees, a coach, entrepreneur, and change maker. After retiring as professor in higher education, as a form of nonviolence, her focus is teaching students to graduate fully debt-free using her proven grit, blueprint, strategies, and accountability system. She attended her first training with the King Center in April of 2018 and was immediately devoted to Dr. King's philosophy and methodology of Nonviolence 365. It is not hyperbole to say that nonviolence has impacted every facet of her life. Now her mission is to incorporate nonviolence into schools and universities, joining other practitioners across the globe to create the beloved community. Dr. Roz, are you ready to share the miracle of you with the imagination?
I certainly am. I am delighted to be here. I am so honored to be here. It is truly, truly a joy. And even though you're not looking at my face, you're hearing my voice, and I hope you hear how excited I am.
Oh, and I can tell you, she's showing the excitement. The fun for me is, Roz, that very rarely do I get an opportunity where a guest comes from Mary. We do a lot of work going out into the public to find people like yourself, but very rarely does someone come through Mary. So it's so exciting for me to have this opportunity to share with you.
Wow. Well, what an honor. As I'm sure everybody here knows, if you're listening to Vince and you know Mary, what an amazing angel she is. And I am just so grateful that she introduced us and that we were able to make this happen. So thank you for having me.
So as we get started here, Dr. Roz, could you share a little bit more about yourself and a little bit more about what you're doing right now? And then we'll dive into some of the fun questions.
All right, very good, very good. So, I it just sort of as a broad umbrella, I call myself a nonviolent strategist, and it shows up in two different ways. So, the first way is, as you've already mentioned, the debt-free degree. So, I believe that graduating with $75,000 in debt—that's the average student loan debt—is a form of violence, particularly because there's $30 billion. $30 billion of scholarships and grants out there. And so if I can help students navigate through obtaining whatever degree. So I have 3 degrees, including my PhD, and I only took $1,000 in loans. So if I can show students how to do that, you can imagine somebody's trajectory professionally, personally, if you have $75,000 in debt or you're debt free when you get out of college. And what does that look like? So that's one form of where the nonviolent strategist shows up. The other is I am a certified trainer of nonviolence for the King Center. There are only 15 certified trainers from the King Center, so I'm deeply honored to be a part of that illustrious team. I'm also the content learning project manager for the King Center. So that is really talking to folks globally. I mean, I've talked to probably people from 3 different countries this week who are interested in nonviolence. And so that's another way where it shows up.
Oh, how awesome. And what a difference that you're making in the world through stepping into that. So first, just to give the listeners, the imagination, a little bit more about you, what were you teaching in higher education?
So I had lots and lots of different hats and roles in higher ed. So I taught in College of Ed at one institution. I taught strategies for college success at 2 different institutions. Then I taught in the master's program of rehabilitation counseling for 2 other institutions. So that was my teaching career. But I also primarily in higher ed, I was working with students with disabilities. So director of disability services, working in and around the higher ed to make sure that they graduate and go into a job. I was also in the testing program and in career services. So I had a very myriad career in higher ed, which I think also uniquely qualifies me to talk about how to graduate debt free, because I understand from the professor side, but I also understand from the student side and that learning aspect.
Excellent. In Imagine Miracles, we teach that all along our life path, we develop gifts and talents that we can use as we bring more and more of our divine intent or our mission purpose to the world. So it's obvious in your experiences, you're bringing that more and more, and definitely a lifetime of service. Let me ask you this, Dr. Ross, was there a wake-up call or an aha moment that once you started moving from the higher education world that you knew nonviolence was something that you wanted to be a part of, you knew that helping students was something you wanted to continue to do?
Absolutely. One of my mentors is Roger James Hamilton. He's the founder of Genius U, which is an international entrepreneurial platform, amazing organization. I heard him say one time that our identity is where we put the dent in the universe. And for me, that dent in the universe was April of 2018, attending that 2-day training and orientation to Martin Luther King's philosophy and methodology of nonviolence. So much clicked into place for me. I have a faith tradition, and so it perfectly aligned with my faith tradition, but yet it gave it parameters and some very practical ways that I could use nonviolence. And we talk about at the King Center that nonviolence is a love-centered way of thinking, speaking, engaging, and acting. And so transforming that to be a love-centered way. So much in our country and in our culture is very this or this. You either vote with this letter or you vote with this letter. You either believe this or you believe this, or there's just all these ways where it's very divisive. And yet nonviolence says, Vince, you're my brother. And regardless of what political party you're in, or what ethnicity you are, or what class you're in, we are brother and sister. And Dr. King even went so far to say that Vince cannot be all Vince is meant to be until Elizabeth is all she is meant to be, and vice versa. And that's the beauty of nonviolence, just understanding that interconnectedness. It really helped me navigate, just as I said, some divisiveness, but also Dr. King writes about his pilgrimage to nonviolence. And in so doing, he researches a lot of theologians and philosophers. And basically, he would look at a philosopher, and while he might not agree with the entire philosophy, he could say, well, this is a thread of truth. And if all of us are focused on the threads of truths from other people rather than the things that divide us or the things we don't agree with, then you can imagine that the world would be, I believe, a much more loving, much more inclusive community.
So we're going to tap into some exciting things here because of what you just said there. First of all, the interesting thing for the imagination, and you've heard it from me before, quantum physics tells us that there are no mistakes or coincidences. Quantum physics tells us that every one of us is part of the whole, and
Yes.
it's exciting that it's not an either or world if
Right.
you're willing to accept that. So Dr. King's philosophies, the universal laws, spirituality, quantum physics, all takes us to that place that we're one, and we're responsible for helping each person live their fullness and to live our fullness to make that all happen. So that's so exciting. You said pulling the strands of truth. So I've got a question for you, and this is kind of this is diving into the Dr. Ra's philosophies here. So what do you feel about us each having our own truths, and how we can deal with each of us having our own truths?
That is a beautiful question. I think that if I am through the lens of I love you and you are my brother and this is your truth, then I hear you. That may not be my lived experience, but I'm not going to discount what you're saying is your lived experience because it's not my lived experience. And oftentimes, people who are, particularly people in power, will say to people who are oppressed, that's not my experience, therefore that's not what's going on there. And two things can be simultaneously true. You know, somebody can say, take for example, the school to prison pipeline. You know, many people think that the reason why prisons are full of African Americans are because African Americans are more guilty than other races, but that's not the picture. The picture is African Americans are frequently more pulled over and then, you know, accused of things. There are lots and lots of cases where you have an African American that's charged with, you know, a crime, and their penalty is far more severe than someone of another race charged with the same crime. And so, or the person may not even been charged, or they might even, you know, have the charges dismissed. And so in certain pockets, people may say, I believe that you only go to jail when you're guilty, and therefore everybody there that is guilty. And that's not the lived experience of everybody. So understanding that, being loving enough, being open-minded enough, being understanding really of that interconnectedness to say, I don't have a clue of what you're talking about. I just talked to somebody the other day for a different organization, and he was talking about buying real estate in the metaverse. And I literally said, I don't have a clue of what you're talking about. I understand that you're saying it's real, and I want to know more about it. I certainly believe you. So there's that truth. But for me, that's not a truth. You know, I'm not a property owner in the metaverse, but I don't deny that he is. And I believe when we come at things with that perspective, it certainly is demonstrating love to each other, to say, you know, tell me more. I mean, what a beautiful question to say, rather than you're a liar.
Exactly. So true. So why do we want to hold on to our truths, or why do we want to make our truth the only truth?
Well, I can't answer for the people that would feel that way. I don't feel that way. I have Elizabeth's truth, but Elizabeth's truth isn't it's not like I'm saying I'm the only person that understands what's best for 7.8 billion people on the planet. Elizabeth is barely doing what Elizabeth can do for Elizabeth and her higher power, and so for me to, to step out and say, this is what's best for you. Now, my truth is, yeah, I think we should love everybody. My truth is that every single person has that spark of divinity in them. And so I believe if I can see the spark of divinity in all 7.8 billion people, then Vince, you can too. And other people who may say you're a good person and you're not, there is no perfect good person. I sin every day. I'm not a great nonviolence practitioner every day. I stumble every single day. And yet, as Brian Stevenson says, none of us are the worst thing we've ever done. There's just so much more to us.
Let me ask you this. So as you started to understand the importance of us being there for each other, taking each other's hand when we need it, maybe even not being supportive when it's important to not be supportive of someone in maybe their lowest times, supporting them in bringing their vibration up, but not necessarily supporting their lower vibration. What stepped you into, or why did you move into the debt-free world? And tell us a little bit about that.
As I said, I graduated with 3 degrees and only took $1,000 in loans because that was what I was taught to do. And I didn't realize that college debt was an issue until 2005, when I came back to work at an institution here in Georgia. And I heard students then talking about graduating with $25,000 in debt, $30,000 in debt, which at that time was a lot of money. It's still a lot of money. And that really, it just clanged in my ears that, and I would just have students in my office that would just say, oh yeah, I get all this great financial aid, and, I can buy anything I want to buy, and I can party, and I don't have to work, and, I'll just pay it off later. And it was just blasé attitude of I'll take it now and pay it off later. And then the more that I talked with students, the more I said, there's another way. And when I retired from higher ed, in true Elizabeth fashion, I had 7 different courses and probably 14 different coaching programs as a brand new entrepreneur, trying to figure out the thing, that would stick. And while all of those are very viable programs, and, of course, I believe they're excellent programs that everybody needs to take them, what was a thread through all of them was debt-free degree. How do you graduate with as little debt as possible? And so I'm constantly talking to people about ways that they can mitigate debt or navigate it completely without any debt whatsoever. And I just think that, just like so many other things, we kind of get in our bubbles and we kind of hear this cacophony of, this friend has debt, this friend has debt, this friend has debt. And then, my parents have debt. And then the financial aid is offering me more money. And then I guess this is what we do. We just accept the student loans and figure out how to pay for it later. And while I'm only focused on debt-free degree. So other people have asked me, do you think other debt is wrong? Well, that's not even my purview. Like, I don't even have an opinion on that for anybody else. What I do have an opinion on is I believe that here in the United States, it is entirely possible for students to graduate debt-free. It's if they want to or not. And sometimes that's a mindset shift. I imagine y'all talk a lot about mindset in your various aspects of how do you incorporate something new, some new concept. And I believe debt-free degree is a new concept that's catching on.
Oh, exactly. And we do have societal beliefs. We do have societal ways of looking at things that we kind of get programmed into us. And it's scientifically, it's very easy to program the brain. We just haven't learned how to do it into moving into a new belief system. So as you stepped into your program, you developed the GRIT blueprint. And I know GRIT stands for a lot of different things. Could you share some of those?
Yes, yes. Oh, thank you so much for asking me. So, overall, just undergirding all of my programs, GRIT stands for goal oriented. So, begin with the end in mind. Resilient. How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. The I in all of my programs is always interconnectedness. So that's perfect for this podcast. You understand that. That is oftentimes work smarter, not harder. And then the T is tenacious. And so it's not practice makes perfect, but perfect practice makes perfect. So I can say I'm 5'2". Those of you that don't know me, I'm 5'2". I'm not a great basketball player, but I can stand there and shoot hoops. But if I'm not standing under the basket, then I can practice that shot all day long, and still it's not perfect practice. So it's not just the practicing that's important, but it's that perfect practice. So like I've had students that said, oh, I studied 15 hours on that test and I failed. Well, you didn't study the right things. Obviously you put your time in, but that wasn't where your time needed to be spent. And so, so that is the undergirding of all of them. For debt-free degree, it's the G is grants and scholarships. And so, as I mentioned, there's $30 billion in that. The R is return on investment. The I is interconnected. And then the T is my triangle approach. And basically, if you can think about a stool, three-legged stool. So one would be SM, that's student money. What is the student going to contribute in terms of their degree? FM, that's your friends, your family, your folks, the people you're familiar with. And then OPM is other people's money. Now, Vince, I did a podcast about a year ago in Australia, and the the podcast host thought I said opium, as if we were going to sell opium as our third option. That's not what I'm advocating at all, people. Okay.
It is a quick way to pay for education.
Well, apparently some people may say that, but I don't know. So that return on investment is also really critical. I spoke with a family one time, and he was saying, well, my daughter could go to the state school and it's about $5,000 a semester. But of course, she wants to go to the blah, blah school that was, I think $50,000 a year. And they had not saved anything, and they were going to take loans on for themselves. And so he was just sort of blithely saying, she probably don't want to go to the state school. So we're probably going to be, $200,000 in debt. And just like, that was just what you do for your kid. And I said, well, there are other options. And he kind of waved his hand. And I think that also is a little bit of a cultural thing. I think there are certain people who are in pockets who will sort of brag on, this is how much I took on in order to give my child, something. And there's again, those threads of truth, because how beautiful is that this parent wants to sacrifice, wants to work hard, wants to support, wants to encourage, wants to say, this is your dream, honey, let's go make it happen. And yet that's also a quite heavy burden for somebody who is within a stone's throw of retirement. I mean, if you're in your 40s or 50s, you're closer to retirement than the daughter is, certainly. And so, what does that look like if there was a way to demonstrate that love and also help her graduate debt free?
It goes back a lot to the collective beliefs, the collective pressures. What is a good dad? What is a good mom type of situation? And it's nice to have the options. We have this wonderful free will, but we don't necessarily have all the options in front of us. So at least let's bring the options in. I want to go back to I think obviously the most important thing in your grit, and that's the interconnectedness, because it shows up everywhere. Could you, as it comes to the debt-free college, the debt-free degree, how does interconnectedness come into that, and how can people use the understanding of interconnectedness to help them in that?
So obviously interconnectedness in terms of people is huge. And so let's say, for example, that you decide as part of what you want to do for college that you're going to spend 15 hours a week on a job. So you can either spend 15 hours a week at employer A, who may or may not schedule you for those 15 hours, or you could look for an employer that's maybe a little bit larger employer, somebody that would guarantee you those hours and also provide tuition assistance. So it's being strategic to think about, if I'm going to spend 15 hours, then where am I better able to spend my time? Also, you can also spend your time and say, okay, I can get a job and work that many hours and earn this amount of money, or I can spend 15 hours and apply for scholarships. And so I'm applying for 500, 1,000, 2,000. And people will say, well, I mean, $1,000, like, our degree is going to be $100,000, $80,000. What's a $1,000 scholarship? But the reverse is true. If you, let's say you graduate from college and you get a job making $50 an hour ish. Okay. How many hours are you going to have to work to pay off just that $1,000 that you could have written an essay for 4 years prior? And so having that mindset of how are you going to pay it off? The other thing is you never know when somebody you're connected to is going to be a ticket to the next thing. And so I had a student just the other day talking about he did an internship, he did a volunteer, and he did it to, boost his high school resume, but he didn't phone it in. I mean, he got there, he did the internship, he was intentional, he did what was asked, he went really above and beyond. He really liked the internship. And it turns out that the coordinator was so impressed with him that the coordinator wrote a letter of recommendation. And then he got an amazing scholarship based on a lot of the things he did and also using that recommendation. And this was a recommendation that wasn't an educator. So you just never know how the things that you're doing are going to show up. Also, you look at essays and you can kind of see a pattern when you begin applying for scholarships. So one of my new favorite ones is the 2022 Side Hustling Student Opportunity Scholarship. And so if you've got a side hustle, tell us all about it. And then, here are the ways to win it. But one of the things on there said, your essay can't have been published anywhere else. But you can take an essay, you can take an idea and tweak it. And I don't mean a word or two. I mean, I do mean like you do need to rework it, but you don't have to completely write a new essay for every single scholarship. You can kind of format it to what it is that they're asking for. So those are just some of the ways that interconnectedness shows up with debt-free degree.
Excellent. Dr. Ross, can you share an example of what's happened with one of your clients?
Oh, excellent. Yes. So one of my favorite stories to tell is about Henry. And Henry's grandmother and I are good friends. And Henry had gone to a private institution, had accrued $75,000, $80,000 in debt, had accrued over 200 credit hours and no bachelor's degree. And for those of you that aren't aware, most bachelor's degrees require about 120 credit hours, but he had changed his major so many times. And so we basically sat down, we looked at his transcript, we looked at his program of study. There seemed to be two majors that he could reasonably attain fairly quickly, but Henry wanted to be a foreign language professor, so he wanted his PhD in foreign languages. And so he was so despondent that after 80 grand and 200 hours, he didn't have a bachelor's degree, and he was so far away from his goal of being a professor. So we sat down, we did looked at all his transcript and looked at the majors. And so we met with the registrar, figured out a major, figured out he could graduate in 2 semesters. He went FM and secured some family funding for those last 2 semesters, saying, I'm going to get out of here, I'm going to graduate with that. And then I helped him get a job as a janitor. And the grandmother was very displeased. And she let me know, again, we were friends. She let me know that her grandson was, that she had higher aspirations for him than being a janitor. I said, do you understand that Henry is in debt with $80,000 in debt, and he wants at least 2 more degrees? So how are we going to help him get these 2 degrees? If you are a janitor working for any in-state institution in Georgia, and there's 17 other states that offer this, then you get tuition and fees at any other in-state institution, regardless of your job. So here Henry is, he's working 3 to 11. And Henry's smart, y'all. Henry is really, really, really good at his job. Henry doesn't need 8 hours on the clock to clean buildings every single night. Obviously, some nights he does, but some nights he doesn't. But he is required to be there for 8 hours. So he can choose to pop in a podcast. If he chose to do that, Vince, I hope it's your podcast. But he could also choose to use that time on the clock to study. That's the interconnected piece. That's that work smarter, not harder piece, right? And so he is on track to get his master's and his PhD at various institutions here in Georgia, working as a janitor. Now, it may be at some point that he says after he gets his master's, or even before, I want to get a different job in higher ed. But he's already earning a salary, which is paying his bills. He's earning vacation time. He's earning sick time. He's got health insurance, which he didn't have before at the other job he had. He also is earning retirement. And so it doesn't matter where you start, it matters where you finish. So retirement's based on your highest 2 years of salary, not your first 2 years. So that's a little bit about Henry and a trajectory of putting him on the path to getting his PhD.
Awesome. Thank you for that example. Now, we're getting close to the end of our time. Could you share one parting piece of guidance that you think that everybody that's listening to this podcast needs to know?
I would say studying nonviolence is absolutely critical. And as I mentioned before, our definition is it's a love-centered way. So it's got to start with that love. And then it leads to personal and then cultural and then societal transformation. So nonviolence, it starts with me. King Holiday Observance, that was our motto this year, was it starts with me. We just released a children's book called It Starts With Me. And I showed, we did a partnership with the Atlanta Center for Puppetry Arts and videoed this, recorded it. And so I showed a YouTube to a group of folks in corporate. And there was a gentleman that had tears coming down his face, and his coworker, of course, this is on Zoom. And so, I didn't really notice that he was crying, but his coworker said, "Tom, why are you crying?" He goes, it's just so beautiful. It's just so powerful. Love is so powerful. And it truly is.
The most powerful thing. So thank you for sharing that. And that's something for all of us to take out and hold on day to day, moment to moment. Yeah. Dr. Roz, can you share how we can get in touch with you and learn more about what you're doing?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I have just launched my Patreon actually this week. So I'm so excited to be on this podcast to talk to you all about it, because basically all of the coaching and all of the teaching that I'm doing, I've put on a platform so that folks can go there and watch the videos and really learn and dig in. It's 3 different tiers. It's a membership site. So it's patreon.com/debt-free degree. For everybody that's listening, for those of you that sign up, for your first month, I will be glad to refund you back half. So whichever tier you sign up, you just send me a message in Patreon and put in there imagine miracles, right? Is that what you want to say, Vince? Or
yeah, imagine miracles would be great. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Imagine miracles. And so if they will just use that code, and then that's how I'll know that they've heard it from this podcast, and I will refund you back that half of your first month of your membership with debt-free degree.
What an amazing gift. Thank you so much. I'll make sure all that information is available on Dr. Roz's episode. Just go to themiracleu.com, look for her episode, and that information will all be available to you. Dr. Roz, thank you so much for joining me today. I enjoyed every second of our interview and what you're bringing to the world and the changes that it will make and the fear that it will ease. It is so spectacular. So thank you very much.
Vince, thank you. Thank you for your podcast. Thank you for the work that you and Mary are doing in the world and the blessing that you are to so many. And for the folks that haven't yet encountered you, they're in for a true gift.
Thank you so much. Speaking of Mary, on behalf of her and the entire team here at Imagine Miracles, we want to wish each and every one of you a miracle day.
You've completed this episode of The Miracle You, but we have plenty more to help you discover your own personal passion and purpose. Head over to themiracleyou.com for free resources to assist you on your journey, as well as register for our free webinar, Discover Your Miracle Life, 3 Mind Awakening Steps Toward Your Unique Purpose, or apply for a one-on-one Your Life, Your Way breakthrough session and discover your next best step on your journey. All available exclusively on our website. That's themiracleyou.com. We look forward to sharing more experiences of passion, purpose, and life by design next time, right here on The Miracle You.